Bastion, the Immortal Great Souls, Book 1. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is the Bastion by Phil Tucker book review. Before we jump into the review, make sure you check in the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord should you want to come along for the ride. Now, Bastion is an epic progression fantasy that Mark Timoney has been bugging me to read since we became friends, and it did not disappoint. This is the Immortal Great Souls book number 1. It was an incredible progression fantasy that continually built its world, characters, and stakes through each subsequent chapter, and I was always left wanting to know what would happen next. The reader is given no time to prepare. We are thrown into the action straight away as we witness our main protagonist Scorio walk into a tomb with no memory of who he is and what he means to the world around him. As he and 3 others take on their first gauntlet run to test their skills, it becomes apparent that everyone here has no idea where they fit in. Hearts race as this group tackles increasingly difficult challenges waiting for them beyond every door. Without training, no member of the group makes it very far through the trials, and each undergoes a painful death. But death isn't the end in Bastion, and they awake in a room full of hundreds that have just undertaken the same trial. Each person who has undertaken this gauntlet run is a warrior with no memories of their past lives, reincarnated as a soldier to conquer the 10 layers of hell. While his friends move on into the academy to be trained in the ways of war, Scorio is thrown out, deemed what is known as a red lister. He is sentenced to a life of doom to be forgotten with the scraps of the cohort. But Scorio will not stay down for long. He will fight his way from dire circumstances, make advantageous friendships, and never take no for an answer. Scorio wants to be the best, and he will stop at nothing to get into the academy and come out on top. Bastion was this incredible tale of determination, hot-headedness, friendships, life, and never giving up. If you're a fan of morally grey characters with meaningful arcs, things like found families, if you like a good magic score, a leveling up system, or interactive world building, you are going to have a great time with Bastion. There was so much to love in this 827-page beast. The world building, the characters, and the way consequences for actions were explored were my top picks. Let's start with the world building. The world of Bastion is enormous, and it is given to the reader in little snippets through character interactions. As each character progressions, so does the reader's knowledge and the character's knowledge within the book. As an example, as Scorio fights his way into the ruins, we learn that those in the academy are given higher treatment, access to power-enhancing pills, potions, and training that will advance them in this war for hell. But in a world without memories and unwilling to give in to defeat, Scorio will not be stopped, so he has to interact with the world around him. He interacts with the ruins, the people that he meets, to gain as much knowledge as possible in order to progress himself forward if he has any hopes of making it into the academy one day. Through his actions, we do learn that the world is full of ways to progress outside of the academy, albeit slower than those who are being fed power pills every single day. Each action Scorio takes to level up or learn about the world opens up the ability for the reader to do the same. As an example of this, there is a time where Scorio has decided to go running at night to see if he can find a certain plant. In this format, we learnt about the world at night, the terrain, what creatures inhabit it, what life is like outside of the academy for people who never made it within their walls, and so on. This world building was slow, but it continued throughout the entire story to provide a rich, lived-in experience for me as the reader, but saying too much here would give away spoilers, so that's all you get for now. This slow world building style really opened up the world for me as a reader, but I don't want to say too much for fear of spoilers. The last thing I'll say about the world building here is there is some very clever foreshadowing for future installments. Through Bastion being quite a big book, we see various parts of this world where this story could lead, and the author drops hints along the way as to what comes next. Next up, we have character work. Tucker again does this quite slowly, with each character leaving their own impact. Scorio was shockingly not my favourite character throughout the entire reading experience, but as a reader I was allowed to come to that conclusion myself by getting to know him and seeing how he operates completely before another character would come on the page and be explored in much the same way. There's a remarkable found family dynamic amongst the four main characters that we have here. Each person brings something new to the table and has their own hang-ups and insecurities, and they've all learned how to survive in their own ways. My favourite character of this book, and maybe of all time up until this point, is a character named Naomi, or the Nightmare Lady, depending on what form she's in. Trapped in one of Scorio's schemes, she reluctantly agrees to give him a week of her time in order to train him about the rough world that he's found himself in. Throughout this time, we get to see her mind change about Scorio, albeit begrudgingly, from being curious to realizing that maybe she doesn't have to go through this world so alone. These two characters had such a strong, non-romantic connection that blossomed throughout the pages, and from here she was able to become a major part of the journey, and not only in Scorio's storyline, but also many others, which I won't give away. There are so many incredible characters in this book, not only our main four, but a whole bunch of side characters that I believe are going to become more important as this story progresses. The last praise that I do want to mention for a progression fantasy in particular is the way in which consequences were explored in Bastion. Being a progression fantasy, characters died. They died a lot, but death was never an endgame. Each time the character died, they would respawn ready to take on another tournament or another gauntlet run, or just even another crack at life. Death here seemingly had no consequences for our cast. In fact, the crew had to die in order to level up, in order to get that next progression. The title of Cinder, Emberling, or Tombspark isn't going to come to anyone who does not take on these challenges, which will likely end in death. So why would I be talking about consequences in a book like this? There is more than one way to level up in this world. Some take the easy route, and some have to fight like hell to make it past level 1 or Char in this book. But without doing the proper training, it will significantly decrease your chances to rising to the top, as some of our characters have to find out the hard way. Things like heart damage, slower healing, banishment from the grounds, lost friendships, and so much more could await the careless character going through these steps. I thought this was a really interesting way to explore consequences where death essentially means little to the characters in this book. I really did like a lot about Bastion. It was a 5-star read for me. Not that it's my favourite thing that I've ever read, but it really was executed so well that I couldn't give it less than 5 stars by my own rating scale. I could go on and on about some cool abilities that came to each person as they leveled up. They gained various powers or different forms. There were more incredible world building elements that made this fictional place feel so very real. Our side characters, which definitely have more to say in the future, and in terms of progression, we're only on level 3 at the moment, and there are 10. Luckily, book 2 is already out, so we can go ahead and read that one straight away. This is progression fantasy at its finest, and I can see why people get addicted to the genre after reading this book. I highly recommend anyone who does like progression fantasy, if you haven't, to give this one a go if you're even remotely interested in the sub-genre. Have you read Bastion? Will you read Bastion? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give it one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.